Welcome in, Believe in Commanders podcast. Scott Jackson and Anthony Armstrong. We are part of the Believe Network and brought to you by FanDuel. Our pleasure this week. You see the man in the center box there, the Bucky Brooks show on Believe Network. You see him all over NFL Network as well. Former NFL player and also front office. Good enough to give us some time and talk about this Commanders offseason. How you doing, Bucky?
I'm good. What's going on, guys?
Man, doing good. Glad to have you joining us. Let's get this thing going. As I put in the chat, I said, hey, all the weather is sunny up there in the Commanders land, up there in Ashburn. So first off, what is your just overall thought of that pick and what Sonny is going to bring to that Commanders defense that needed so much help from last season?
Well, look, man, it's a perfect world for him to be sitting there when they were picking. Obviously, you had a natural spot with Bobby Wagner being there. You want to get younger. You want to get more athletic and more dynamic. And Sonny Styles certainly gives you that. When you look at a guy who transitioned from being a safety to a linebacker, who added some pass rush responsibilities in his career, he's a bit of a do-it-all playmaker. And for Dan Quinn, this is an opportunity to have someone at that second level that can give you that flexibility that you've been looking for years. You saw the success that Dan Quinn had with Micah Parsons and helping him become kind of a unicorn at the second level. He can do it in a very different way with Sonny Styles, but have similar results in terms of overall impact.
Well, that's exciting. You see a guy who, obviously, as you said, makes that transition, so still kind of learning the position. Bigger guy, height-wise, obviously 6'5", pretty long guy. Do you anticipate he's the kind of guy that, like they say, will have the green dot immediately and be able to handle that part of the game? Because everybody you talk to seems to say this guy, puts in a lot of work off the field as well as on the field.
Yeah, sometimes you can bog a young player down when you put that responsibility on him early. I think he's such a good athlete and so dynamic in what he does. Maybe you don't want to give him those added layers of responsibility as he's learning as a rookie. Maybe you have one of your veterans take on the calling and doing the traffic direction and allow him to do what he does well, which is see ball, get ball. I think he's certainly smart enough. When I've had a conversation with him, he's been very impressive in terms of like his football knowledge, his awareness, his communication skills. I think it's a situation that Dan Quinn has to evaluate what would be best for Sonny Styles to be able to unlock some of the playmaking ability that made us pick him as a top 10 pick.
Yeah, you mentioned him, the green dot responsibility, slowing a player down. It makes me think of a Jayden Daniels, previous draft pick, and it was one of those things like if he knew where to go, he was very, very dangerous. But they bogged him down with too many responsibilities. So we definitely have a much higher expectation from Sonny Styles, and think he'll be able to make a bigger splash. Overall, NFC East wide. What team do you feel made the biggest strides after the draft in their free agent acquisitions, and maybe they're sitting in a better position now than they were last year?
I think the team everyone's talking about is the New York Giants. And part of the reasons people are talking about the Giants is because they have credibility starting from the head coach coming over. John Harbaugh coming over from Baltimore, going to New York, a guy that has won a Super Bowl. He's been on the job for 18 years, and 11 of those seasons, his teams won at least 10 games. That's impressive consistency from a coach in this league. So when you go to the Giants and you give him a roster there right now, as presently constructed, they have 5 first-round picks in that linebacker room. And you have a defensive coordinator in Denard Wilson who knows how John Harbaugh wants to play based on their time together in Baltimore. It just makes it a challenge to face a team like that because they know when the first meeting you have and John Harbaugh stands in the room, all eyes are going to be on him and everyone's going to listen to what he said based on his resume. And then when you add more pieces to the puzzle, like on offense, you think about adding Malachi Fields to an offense that will have Malik Neighbors when they get back, Isaiah Likely to team up with Theo Johnson, the running game they have when Cam Scatterbull gets back, and the continued growth of Jackson Dart, you probably feel real good about your chances of jumping back into the playoff mix if you're the Giants because the talent and the coaching are now at a higher level.
Bucky Brooks, the Bucky Brooks Show on Believe Network. You can see him on NFL Network. Scott Jackson and Anthony Armstrong here. They Believe in Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel. Harbaugh, the home run hire of the offseason, clearly. You mentioned the coordinators, the coordinator there, the defense coordinator, Denard Wilson, is brand new. Here in Washington with the Commanders, you have 2 first-time coordinators. I just want to get your take on that. A lot of people say that's kind of risky on Dan Quinn's part. Year 3 after a down year, going with 2 unknowns in a sense. David Blau, literally was an assistant quarterbacks coach last year until Tavika Pritchard got the job with Stanford, and so he finished the year as a quarterbacks coach. Durante Jones, on the other hand, he's been around a while. I mean, he was a coordinator in college, so I mean, he's certainly put in his dues at this point, needless to say. So how do you kind of assess that move on their part and how that transition may be bumpy or may be smooth?
Look, I saw last year with the Jacksonville Jaguars, they had all newbies in all those prime positions, and they ended up winning 13 games. They did it with first-time coordinators on offense and defense and a head coach, and a young general manager, and found a way to get it done. I think at the end of the day, it's about your ability to teach and your ability to get people to follow your lead. And if these newbies, these young coordinators that are kind of taking over, if they can get everyone in the room to buy into what they're selling, yeah, it can work out. The big thing that Dan Quinn has in his favor is he's been a head coach. This is second go round. So he understands how to manage the entire team while also pushing his coaches to take greater responsibility. As I look at the offense and I think about David Blount, what he's been able to do and what he will be given in terms of Jayden Daniels and this offense and how they can expand it and grow from what they were doing under Cliff Kingsbury, I'm very optimistic that we could see an even better version of Jayden Daniels than we saw his rookie season. Then defensively, Durante Jones just taking over and being able to give this defense a refresher. I still believe that Dan Quinn has to be heavily involved. I just think it'll have some different pictures and different looks that allow their players to play much faster.
Yeah, speed is the name of the game. They want to get younger and faster on defense. They did just that, but there's one area, I guess maybe two, corner and safety, being the spots that they kind of left something to be fulfilled. Where do you see that position looking at for the Commanders, is there still somebody out there maybe in the free agency pool that they'll have to go and bring in training camp?
A lot of times this is kind of wait and see stuff, right? So we're in phase 2 where we begin to get on the grass. Teams are going. You can have a little more competitive interactions between offense and defense, and that'll give the front office an opportunity to kind of see where they're at. I have always known, Adam Peters is one of the best at doing what he does, but a lot of times what you like to do is kind of have a little something in your back pocket that you kind of go to in the summer if you don't like the way the roster is presently constructed. I think the next 2 weeks will tell us a lot. If you see movement after the next 2 weeks, then it means they're not really confident in what they had. If you don't see movement, it feels like things are trending the right way, and they feel good about what they have going into training camp. But yeah, there'll be a veteran or two that is on call, and then depending on how these guys look in OTAs and camp, that'll determine whether they call this completed or not.
Bucky Brooks, the Bucky Brooks Show on Believe Network. And of course, you check him out on NFL Network here with us on Believe in Commander. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong, brought to you by FanDuel here on the Believe Network. Okay, look, the defensive improvements, was the number one checklist for a lot of fans this offseason for this team. But let's be honest, Bucky, if we don't see the guy we saw year one under center, a lot of this stuff is up for debate, right, of how good this team can be. But he was amazing his rookie season. Didn't see him enough on the field last year. There were some glimpses of it, but never had that consistent time on the field. Talking about Jayden Daniels. So how do you kind of see Jayden? Is it a prove it kind of season for him, or do you think that this is the type of player that, hey, look, he had a setback last year. Let's just take a deep breath and let this guy be healthy, and we know that he'll play at a high level.
Yeah, no, I think he just had a setback. I believe what we saw his rookie season is more who he is and what he'll continue to be in this league. He's dynamic. He's electric. He's explosive. He can dominate the game as a runner or as a thrower. Just a rare combination of skills at that position. And I said it when he came into the league. He's the best dual threat quarterback that we've seen enter this league in terms of the polish and explosiveness, polish as a passer, explosiveness as a runner. He has to channel that, though, and he has to understand how to protect himself when he flees the pocket. If he understands when to get down, when to go for it, when to utilize his legs compared to throwing the ball from the pocket, he'll be fine. And I think it's a skill that most of the great ones master. For instance, Josh Allen typically only runs in gotta-have-it moments. When we mean those gotta-have-it moments, third down, red zone, 2-minute game on the line. Jayden Daniels has to get to that point where he understands third down, I'll go for it. Red zone, when I gotta have it inside the 10. 2-minute situation when it's, look, the game's on the line. And if I need to make a play, I'll do it. Outside of that, man, throw the ball away, live to play another day. all young quarterbacks kind of understand what the league is like. I think he probably has a clearer understanding of how fast and physical the league is. So he'll make the right modifications to his game.
Yeah, that sounds exactly what I was telling them. I'm like, find 2 incompletions, please. Just like, I don't need you to run on this 1st and 10 and it'd be a scramble for 2nd and 8. No, man, throw that sucker away and let's get into a good play from the huddle. I think that a lot of Jayden's success is, yes, he's athletic, he's skilled, but I think in the coordinator has to be able to protect him as well with the play calling and being able to, grow other parts of this offense. And I want to take a focus to that running back room. Katron Allen is that running back coming out of Penn State, all-time leading rusher over there, and he's giving me Alfred Morris vibes. How do you see that running back room playing out in this upcoming season?
That's a great one. I think I may have used that comparison before. Alfred Morris is a great comparison because with Katron Allen, he is the all-time leader at Penn State, but he is what we call a same-speed runner, meaning you don't see the explosiveness or the juice that you may see in others. It is steady Eddie, like a turtle, but it's productive, and behind a physical offensive line, it will work. And I will say, you just don't run for 4,000-plus yards at Penn State without being a talented player. So to me, it is part of an offensive makeover where they're going to run the football. They're probably going to put Jayden Daniels under center a little more. They'll be able to run front side, bootleg backside. You'll see this game kind of return to some of the 80s and 90s football that we've seen from the past, because I think teams are understanding, hey, we can't just throw it all the time because the way defenses are playing, 2 safeties or whatever. That's why you're seeing the number of not running backs, but the number of tight ends that are being drafted and the number of running backs that are being utilized. You want to be able to control the game, and certainly Katron Allen is a big part of them being able to control the game to set Jayden Daniels up for better success.
Yeah, and Bill Krosky-Merritt showed some good pop last year, had his moments, as the lead back. It does seem like the committee approach is going to be here in play. And they threw Rachaad White, the veteran, in there, who was always good on the backfield in Tampa as a receiver in particular. Do you see that combination of those 3 guys, Bucky, if you bring Allen into the mix, assuming that he's in the team, also Jerome Ford's trying to make this squad, as being successful enough to run the football, as you said, to take that pressure off of Jayden Daniels, so he's not, dropping back, 40 times a game, as sometimes the case is last year.
As much as I would love to say that the runners will dictate how successful the running game is, it really comes down to the offensive line. The offensive line can make or break the performance of those running backs. Now, I will tell you, and Anthony understands this, in the league, it's different. There are different levels to this when we talk about running backs. Like your first-round running backs have all the skills compared to you guys that are drafted in the later rounds. And that difference sometimes can be between a 1,400 or 1,500-yard rusher and a guy that is 1,000 or 1,100. Those yards that you leave on the field a lot of times is due to the talent that you have in the backfield. Now, they're talented enough to put guys that can give them 1,000 to 1,100, but on paper right now, I don't know if there's a guy that a defensive coordinator will say, hey, man, I'm nervous about them. Let's drop some extra defenders in the box and take that away. To me, this is going to have to be a show and tell. They're going to have to prove to people that they're effective enough to be able to get it done. And then after they prove it, they're going to have to do it again when people begin to adjust to them successfully running. That's the difference between the good ones and the great ones in this league. When the defense adjusts, they still have another level that they can go to.
You need that counterpunch on your offense. And I feel like the way that they've been building the offense, it's feeling like, a Shanahan, a McVay, an outside zone type of a scheme. And I love seeing it. I love seeing it. It's nostalgic for me. It makes me think about the center position. They made one draft pick, Matt Golbin, and then they have Nick Allegretti as a holdover from last year. How do you see that position battle playing out? How do you see Matt Golbin maybe making his way onto the field?
I think he eventually will make his way onto the field. I think it plays out the way that it plays out in practice. You go through your 907, your team drills, you look and see who is really part of a very successful unit, and you give them more opportunities. But remember, even though we talk about these one-on-one battles that are for who's going to be the starting center, it's really a collective decision, because the offensive line, unlike any of the other positions on the field, they all have to play 5 on a string. And the chemistry is everything when it comes to those guys, not the talent. And so which one blends in, which one meshes well with the people around him, that's going to be the one that has an opportunity to make a ton of plays. And then it's about making the plays, understanding the things that are available, doing those things that you need to do when the game is on the line. Can you do that? But yeah, it's a long process to being able to get it done, but certainly you have plenty of time to evaluate it.
Bucky Brooks Show on Believe Network. Join us here on Believe in Commander. Scott, Jackson, Anthony Armstrong, part of the Believe Network, and brought to you by FanDuel. The receiver room, they drafted Antonio Williams out of Clemson, a guy who mainly played on the slot, but has played on the outside as well. But it appears to be more maybe of the slot guy. How do you see his game translating in the NFL and how he might fit in this offense? Obviously, Terry McLaurin's your true one, but after that, it's a little bit muddy. It's a lot of players with talent, but maybe nobody that really stands out.
Yeah, Antonio Williams is surprising. I heard from a wide receiver coach from the NFC North shortly after the combine said, look, he's his favorite guy. He feels like he's a quote-unquote pro. And anytime someone dubs a player like that, they're a pro, it speaks to not only what they do on the field, but how they approach the game off the field. And when I think about his preparedness, going to Clemson, being a guy that has thrown touchdown passes and done a bunch of different things as a punt returner, playing in the slot, but also showing the capability of being able to go out wide. To me, he's the perfect third option in the passing game. Not building it to run through him, but the guy that continues to pick up the first downs and do those things. If I look at his game, I think Washington fans will talk about like, hey, is he more like Gary Clark? Where does he fall into? How does he get open in the bunch? I think there's a lot of stuff that he can do that's going to excite fans because he is a chain mover, and paired opposite Terry McLaurin, he's going to get the benefit of playing against the second or third best corner, which should be advantage him being able to work one-on-one from the slot or even outside on the perimeter.
I agree 100%. I think that 4.41 speed, that gives you a ticket to punch, to line up outside and still get those deep routes handled. But you rarely see the combination of being able to handle the slot and be a deep threat in a player. I was a long strider, but the slot stuff, I love to do it mentally, but physically I didn't have the quicks. I didn't have the quick shift and change of tempo, so I can accept that now. Now, at these older ages, man, put me in the slot all day, man. It's just a nice, cool Ike Hilliard game. But
yeah, no, but there is something to that, and that's why, like, with Antonio Williams, right? So the difference, and people always talk about tiers, and is this guy a 1 or a 2 or whatever? The number 1 is the guy that is typically not the fastest, but he's the most complete. He's the route runner that can move the chains. Maybe has some big playability, but that's not really high up on the resume. The number 2 guy is typically the big play specialist, the one that is outside running the vertical routes and doing that. Number 3 is called number 3, but he might be more important than number 2 because he does the dirty work over the middle. So when we talk about Williams and why he's so important, he is the one that when they're blitzing, his eyes go, Jayden Daniels' eyes will go right to Williams on the hots and the sight adjustments, the bubble screens that they throw, the crossing routes underneath. He's going to be in prime position to get a lot of touches. And even though you look at his numbers at Clemson, it's like right around averaging 10 yards per catch. It is not about that. It is how quickly can he get open and uncover, because he could quickly become Jayden Daniels' security blanket in these high pressure moments.
What do you think of the tight end position with big Chig and Okonkwo coming over from the Titans? And obviously with Ertz no longer here, it doesn't appear, but with after the knee injury, I kind of figured that it wasn't going to happen. But what do you think what Chig will bring to this offense they didn't have prior?
Look, man, he's an explosive athlete, and at times he's been a factor for them. But look, he played on bad teams, so it's hard to really figure out what he can be on a bad team. There, he's intriguing because he's one of these new school tight ends that we talk about, a guy that can create and exploit mismatches. Because what you have to do is you have to have a DB that's big enough and physical enough to deal with him in the perimeter, and a linebacker that's fast enough to run with him. That's a challenge. And if you're able to add, because remember the trend in the league, more multiple tight end sets, more 12 personnel, more 13 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, or 1 back, 3 tight ends on the field. And to have someone that athletic, that explosive, that can be kind of a hybrid player at the position, it just gives you more flexibility to create big play opportunities for the quarterback. I like it. I like him. Now, there's work to be done when it comes to how they finish, kind of like polish up that wide receiver room to make sure that you have people in the right role. But I do like the tight end and what he offers.
you mentioned the receiver room, and I was just going to ask about those other free agents that are out there. And frankly, we can bring up both Diggs brothers, and then obviously the Aiyuk situation. Do you feel like any of those folks will be here eventually, or at least get a nod?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of Diggs and Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, there's a natural relationship, Brandon Aiyuk and Adam Peters, but when are the Niners finally going to let him out? Like they aren't playing nice. Part of that is on Brandon because he didn't play nice when he had his opportunity. And this is one with him not only like recovering from the injury, but what's he going to be like in the locker room? Even though he got paid in San Francisco, he still was not happy about the contract, and it played out. It was written all over his face. It was in his body language. It was in some of the defiance that he displayed at times and practices and stuff. Is he going to be a happy guy when he comes to Washington? So that has to be vetted out. Stephon Diggs is interesting because I would say that Stephon Diggs has elevated every quarterback that he's played with. You look at his history, Josh Allen, you look at what most recently with Drake May, all of their games have gone up a notch when he's there. There are a lot of people that are talking about character concerns and issues and those things. But I would say between the lines, he is beloved in the league by his teammates and by those quarterbacks in terms of being able to get him the ball. He fits that role. He fits what they need. And look, you can make the case that he would probably be a better fit than Brandon Aiyuk. The one caveat, the one asterisk that you got to put by it, it's not easy to play at home. It's not easy to play in your neighborhood, in your backyard. Too many people can get to you, too much access. It's something that you have to manage. Now, Stephon Diggs is as mature as they come. But look, there have been some off the field things that kind of make you not uncomfortable, but some things that you've had to kind of deal with. Can he handle being at home and deal with that environment? That'd be the question that the Commanders would have to deal with before they sign him. Are you comfortable having a guy that is playing at home? And the same can be said for his brother. His brother is certainly talented to be a high-end player in the league. He had success previously in Dan Quinn's system. But once again, can you lock in and focus playing at home? Not all players can do that. And so that has to be the investigation that you have with both guys.
Great stuff. Yeah, very true. And this is actually why they didn't take Stephon Diggs the year he came out in the draft. Actually, it was one of the conversations with Scott McLuhan was here way back when, why they went other directions with Jamison Crowder that year. Hey, Bucky, always great having you on. Again, Bucky Brooks Show on Believe Network, and check him out on NFL Network. Thanks, as always, for your time with us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Oh, by the way, before I let you guys go, what do we think about the new uniform choices? Being a guy from North Carolina, having seen the Washington football team for a long time and HTTR, it brings back those old vibes. It's not quite what we saw coming up, but it's certainly a lot closer and a lot easier for those who are longtime fans. Oh,
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of them. I think they look right. They feel right. Even the black units are good. Usually, so those are always hit or miss. I think they got it right on these.
Yeah, no, I like it. I
think they nailed it.
Yeah,
I like the winning colors, winning look. Right. It's a winning look. It was great. All right. Yeah. No, they nailed that. I'm glad they corrected that for sure. All right, Bucky. Thanks a lot as always. For Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson, we are Believing Commanders, brought to you by FanDuel. Thanks for joining us, and we will talk to you again. Please like, comment, and follow us right here on the Believe Network.